Nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another episode of Saga of the 8Points. This is our series of battle reports that is dedicated to Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry, and this is battle report number 8. It is a 1,000 point battle as fought between Lady Domina as well as myself. My friend Lady Domina, she's bringing House Daechir, the Golden Reavers of Skyros, a 1,000 point Idoneth Deepkin warband, and I'm playing the Lords of Azure Skies, a 1,000 point Stormcast Eternals warband. So I've been actually looking forward for this one for a while now. I never really played against Idoneth Deepkin before in Age of Sigmar. My friend Lady Domina, she wanted to play Warcry, and since she's normally our Dark Elf player for our Warhammer Fantasy battle reports, she wanted to try out the Idoneth Deepkin because they were the closest that resembled the Dark Elves, and so she wanted to try those guys out. So we're really excited to see exactly how this battle report goes. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this one, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Valor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now let's talk about the scenario rules for this one. So as you can see, we have our 4 game decks out. The deployment's already done for the terrain. The deployment for this one is called Death Spiral, and on this one, both of our shield units will start off in the battle report, while the rest of the dagger as well as hammer units will wait off into the sidelines. Now, the victory condition for this one is the Comet, and this one's actually kind of cool because this one doesn't start until actually the beginning of the second battle round before the hero phase even starts. So what you do is that you roll a d6, and based on the value that you have, it determines which quadrant the meteor will actually land. And then the objective there, of course, is to seize that meteor or that comet and try to hold on to it as long as possible. The game only lasts until battle round number 3, and by that point, whoever has the most fighters occupying that objective, they're going to be the winners on this one. And the twist for this one is a nice one called Battle of Wits, and what that happens is that each player receives 1 additional wild dice at the start of this battle. So Lady Domina and I will both have 2 wild dice that we'll be able to use at the very first turn. And so that makes it the scenario rules for this one. Alright, so here's the start of the battle plan on this one. As you can see, we're playing on a normal battlefield for Warcry. We got the ruins all set up on this one. Looks really cool. As like I said before, we're using the Death Spiral deployment, so both Lady Domina as well as my shield units are deployed right in the middle of the battlefield, 8 inches away from the board edge, right across from each other in the battlefield. The problem with this battle plan is that this objective is kind of random. I'm not sure where the comet is going to land. It can land right smack dab in the middle. It can add in the upper left-hand quadrant, upper right-hand quadrant, lower left-hand quadrant, lower right-hand quadrant. There is really no way of knowing where this comet's going to land. Now, the only good thing about that is that it starts at round 2. Also, the same thing happens at the beginning of round 2 is that all of our reserve elements pop up as well. So as you can see there, I have your reserve elements at the top left as well as in the top right hand corner in the middle, and Lady Domina has exactly the same thing on the mirror aspect of it on my side. So wherever this comet lands, I can quickly maneuver my forces to quickly engage it and then try to secure it at the same time. But at the same time, Lady Domina also has exactly the same ability as well, and her forces move much faster than mine because mine are only stuck at 4 inches apiece, while hers are about 5, 6, as well as 10. So she can really move across the battlefield quickly. So this one's going to be about a game of speed and momentum, and hopefully I can carry that through. So with the battle plan over with, let's go talk about the deployment real fast. Alright, so let's go talk about my shield unit first. My shield deployment right here in the middle on the battlefield, that is Samus Stormsight. He is my Longstride Raptor, as well as Horus, my Aether Wing. You guys know him, you love him, and those are my shield deployment for this one. Up in the top left-hand corner of the battlefield, ready to get into it with the reserve phase return 2 is my hammer unit. On the right-hand side, that is Balian Swiftsteel. That is my Hunter Prime. He's also the leader of my warband. And right next to him is Meridian Sunhelm, who is also a Vanguard Hunter. And that makes up my hammer deployment for this one. And also waiting until round 2 reserve phase. On the far right hand side, that is my dagger unit. Those are my 2 characters, Tullius Vertus, he's a Vanguard Hunter, and same thing with Kato Shadowstep, he's my 2nd Vanguard Hunter. And that makes up the dagger deployment for this one. So, starting off with Lady Domina in her deployment area for her shield deployment, 8 inches from the table edge in the center of the battlefield, that is Lord Midas Daechir. He is an Ishlain, I believe is how you pronounce that, Lockian prince. He is a war leader, he's the leader on this one. He's got some access to some pretty good abilities. He's got the access to the High Tide ability, as well as the voltaic barrier, I believe is how you pronounce that. So because of that, he's actually kind of kid out to kill as well. He's also pretty good in close combat. He's got a lot of wounds. I think he's got like 35 wounds. He's got pretty good toughness for an elf, and you can also put the hurt on as well. So I'm gonna have to worry about that guy. Alright, so let's go and talk about Lady Domina's dagger deployment over here on the left-hand side of the battlefield. First of all, that rider, that is, her name is Rakarth. She is an Ishlain guard, is what she has. She's also mounted on one of those weird little eel creatures as well. She's also got a good hand weapons, as well as some really good abilities as well. And right next to her, those are two Namarti Reavers, I believe is what they're called. On the right-hand side, that is Mistress Iridani. She's the one that's in green, and the one in pink, that is Sister Sinner. That is the other Namarti Reaver, I believe is what they're called. And that makes up her dagger deployment on this one. And finally, for Lady Domina's hammer deployment, the rider, that is Kalibos. He's a Morsar guard. He's got a lance. He can also fly as well. He's also mounted one of those weird eel creature things. At the same time, she also has two Namarti thralls. On the right-hand side, that character with the halberd, that is Lodi Daechir. He is a Namarti thrall. And the left-hand side, that is Shade. That's the guy who's got the sword and shield. He's the second Namarti thrall. And that pretty much makes up Lady Domina's deployment on this one. So with the deployment phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1 to the hero phase, and Lady Domina will roll off for the priority to see who will be going first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 1 for the Idoneth Deepkin on this one. Lady Domina does manage to get priority on this, and for her ability dice, she scored a triple 5 as well as a pair of 4s. Meanwhile, I got a quad of 3s, which is really awesome because I'm planning on using that for my Long Strike Raptor, as well as a pair of 2s, and now I had one single. Lady Domina decided to use one of her wild dice to secure her initiative for this one, keeping her spare wild die in reserve for later on, and I put my wild dice on this one to get myself a quad of 3s on this one, and I kept my spare die as reserve as well, because I'm having a sneaky suspicion I might need them later on in the battle report. So with the hero phase over with, we skip reserve phase and we go straight to combat phase. So the first thing that Lady Domina does is activate her only fighter on the battlefield, and that is Lord Midas Daechir, and he actually just goes flying across the battlefield. She actually spent a pair of 4s on him for an ability called Low Tide, and apparently this can only be used in the very first battle round of the battle, so that part's kind of interesting to me. A lot of the Idoneth Deepkin abilities are very turn specific, so I don't know if that's good or bad. I do find it kind of limiting, but at the same time I guess I can kind of understand it. It goes with the narrative that these guys come out of the depths during high tide and all that kind of nonsense. But anyways, so she uses the Low Tide ability. What that does is that for the very first battle round, you could add the bonus move equal to the ability dice that she has. So what she does is she flies right across the battlefield, spending 10 inches to get across the battlefield, then closes the distance with the 4 that she gets from her Low Tide ability, and that puts her in striking distance for Samus Stormsight. And then of course she also activates her fighter to fight for a second combat action. Managed to put 15 wounds directly onto my character. It was insane. She got like 3 critical hits off onto Samus Stormsight. So because of that part was horrific. I'm only 5 wounds away from actually being killed, and now I'm within close combat range with Lord Midas Daechir, and I can't shoot this guy in close combat. So that part is pretty rough. So for the rest of the turn, to spend on my 2 activations for my character, both Horus, my Aetherwing, as well as for Samus Stormsight. So I activate Horus first. I move him up first, so that way he's within close range to launch his talent attacks. I also pop his ability for a double called Warning Cry, and what that does is that you can pick an enemy fire within 6 inches, and until the end of that battle round, you can reroll 1 die during an attack made from friendly fighters against that target, seeing how that's going to be kind of important for me. I think Horus managed to put a single wound on the guy as well when he managed to attack. Now the important thing here is that I decided to use Activate Samus Stormsight, and decided to use his fist for the attack, and we looked at the aim strike ability that he can use, which is the quad ability. And what that does, allows you to take the value of the ability to add to the damage for both normal hits as well as critical hits. And while Lady Domina and I were looking at the rules, it doesn't specify whether it's long range shots with his crossbow or with his fists. It doesn't say anything about that. It just says whatever attacks you use and whatever damages you use against that character. So because of that, I'm just going to use as rules written, so I'm going to assume that his fists can be super deadly as well. So I decided to pop that ability and give him 3 extra damage. Managed to put a grand total of, I think, 14 damage on this guy is what I ended up doing. Managed to put 13 damage on top, and then plus the 1 more from Horus, the Aetherwing. So managed to put this guy hurting on it. The only problem is, though, is that Lord Midas Daechir does have 35 wounds still, so I still have to worry about that. So with that, that takes directly to the end of turn number 1. As you can see, not much is really happening so far. It's just Lord Midas Daechir versus Samus Stormsight as well as Horus, and we're just kind of fighting each other right now until we're waiting for the next turn, because the next turn, two things happen. One, the reserve phase occurs and all of our fighters come on the table, and the second important thing that happens as well is that the Comet comes crashing down directly into the battlefield, and we'll know exactly where we need to go in order to secure that objective. So with turn number 1 over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2 to the hero phase, and Lady Dominant and I roll off to see who has priority on this one. Alright, so we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and the Stormcast Eternals managed to get the initiative on this one. By the time it's all said and done, I end up with 3 singles as well as a triple 4, so I can use that for my abilities later on. Lady Dominant got 2 5s as well as 2 2s, and she also got 2 singles as well. She decided to use both of her wild dice in order to secure the initiative on this one by using both of them to be singles, so I decided to do exactly the same things. That way I beat her by 1, netting me the initiative on this one. So with the hero phase over with, we now go directly to the reserves phase. So during the reserve phase, my dagger unit consisting of Kato's Shadow Step as well as Tullius Virtus both show up on the right hand side of the battlefield. I'm really excited to see exactly where these guys will be going because we're waiting for the Comet to come crashing down. And at the same time, my hammer deployment with Balian Swiftsteel as well as Meridian Sunhelm also show up on the top of the battlefield as well. Now, to make matters worse, Lady Dominant's hammer unit does show up, and they show up right behind Samus Stormsight as well as Horus, so that's kind of bad. So Shade as well as Lodi Daechir as well as Calibos show up right behind, and now my Stormstrike, Longstrike Raptor as well as my Aether Ring are going to be seriously surrounded here in a second, so that part's kind of rough. At the same time, the left-hand side of the battlefield, Lady Dominant's dagger units also pop up as well. So Rakarth, she shows up, same thing with Mistress Iridani as well as Sister Sinner. And so the nice thing about this is that they're way off into the left-hand side. They won't be able to do much anything against most of my forces. That is assuming, of course, the Comet doesn't end in that area. But if it does land over there, that'd be bad for me because then Lady Dominant can quickly swoop in and get it. So now with the reserve phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And the Comet comes hurling down towards the earth and smashes right smack dab in the top right hand quadrant right next to those ruins there on the ground level, which is kind of really good because it's within close range towards my 2 characters, Tullius Virtus as well as Kato's Shadow Step, so I can send those fighters forward and hopefully secure that objective and try to hold on to it as long as I can. The nice thing about being Stormcast Eternal is that I do have high toughness as well as high wound counts, so I can pretty much withstand most blows that come after me. However, because this is an objective game, the goal is to have the most fighters holding that objective, and Lady Dominant has certainly more fighters than I do. So I'm going to have to have my work cut out for me. Not only do I have to stay alive and weather the storm of all the blows that are coming my way, but also got to thin down Lady Dominant's forces, that way they don't have enough fighters to actually occupy that area. So with the Comet crashing down, we go directly to the top of the combat phase with my initiative going first. And the first fighter to activate is, of course, Kato's Shadow Step. He is my Vanguard Hunter. He always goes after the objectives. I actually spend a double move for his actions to move across the battlefield directly to that objective in order to secure it. So, net 1 for me. So I got 1 fighter there right now. Meanwhile, Lady Dominant then activates Lord Midas Daechir, her Ishaline Lockian Prince. Actually does a disengage action to actually move back 3 inches away from both Horus as well as from Samus Stormsight, and then she spends one of her actions, which is a full 10 inches, to fly across the battlefield directly above the objective right there on the top of the ruins. So that part's pretty rough as well. The only thing that says going for me is that guy is packing 14 wounds, but he's still pretty dangerous. He can still activate his abilities, so I still have to worry about that. So in order to ensure that I have more bodies on the objective than Lady Dominant does, I then activate Tullius Virtus. He moves up a double action as well to right next to the objective, so that way he can secure it alongside his buddy Kato's Shadow Step. So Lady Dominant then activates her Morsar Guard Calibos. He actually spends one of his ability called Low Tide. The double ability where you can actually move one more inch forward for each movement is what she actually does. So because of that, Calibos moves 22 inches across the battlefield directly right in front of Kato's Shadow Step. It's where you can engage him in close combat later on in the turn. So that part was kind of rough. Meanwhile, for my next activation, I hit up Samus Stormsight and have him actually spend 2 rounds opening fire with his long strike crossbow directly into Lord Midas Daechir. I actually use the triple ability that actually allows me to actually fire twice. Sorry, not triple ability. That's a double ability which actually gives you +1 attacks for first activation for the first attacks, giving me 3 shots total. And I didn't have a double, so the way I saw it is that this is the last time I'm going to be able to use Samus Stormcast before he gets chopped to pieces by Idoneth Deepkin, so I decided to do that, give me 3 shots. I did manage him twice, and I rose his wound level up to 21 wounds, so that part is kind of nice. However, even though he's got 21 wounds on him, he's still got, like, what, 14 more wounds to go before he dies, so that part is kind of sad, and Lord Midas Daechir still kind of sticks it out. Meanwhile, Lady Donna then activates Sister Sinner, her Namarti Reaver, and actually uses the Stormfire ability for one of her actions. That way she gets +1 attack against ranged targets more than 3 inches away. So because of that, she ends up firing, I think she ends up firing, what is it, 5 attacks total. That's what she ends up doing. And I think she got like 4 critical hits out of all those attacks and managed to kill Samus Stormcast, which is pretty sad. So my Longstrike Raptor is now dead, riddled with arrows fired from a blind archer from the Idoneth Deepkin, which is actually pretty crazy. So I then activate Ors, who actually does a double movement across the entirety of the battlefield, directly on top next to Lord Midas Daechir, so that way I have another fighter who is occupying that objective, so that way it can stay within my possession. And then Lady Dama sends in Rakarth, her Ishaline Guard. That person actually spends a double action to move across the battlefield 20 inches and lands on the other side of Tullius Vertus. So now both Tullius Vertus as well as Chaos Shadowstep are now fighting against 2 eel-riding monstrosities, which will be kind of interesting to see exactly what happens because now they're fighting against 3 of them and 2 of them are directly right in front of them on the ground level. In response, I then activate my leader, Balian Swiftsteel. He does a double movement towards those ruins in order to help support both of his hunters who are being attacked by giant eel-riding warriors. And Lady Dama then activates Mistress Iridani, moving her up 6 inches from one of her actions and having her open fire with her bow directly into Balian Swiftsteel. Luckily for me, though, none of her attacks actually wounded, so nothing much really came from that. So that part was kind of nice. And for my final activation, I then bring up Meridian Sunhelm, who's also moves up 8 inches, doing a double move forward, so that way he's right next to Balian Swiftsteel, so that way he can start taking actions during the 3rd battle round. And since I have no more fighters left, the rest of the turn goes to Lady Domina, who then activates her 2 Namarti Thralls, Shade, as well as Lodi Daechir, and both those characters move up 10 inches with double movements hitting towards the objectives, so that way they can also go into the fray, and also help to try to take back the Comet from my forces. And that, folks, takes directly to the end of turn number 2. So here's an overhead shot of the battlefield, so that way you can see what's going on. As you can see, it is becoming a giant swarm of death, just spiraling straight towards that comet that's right in the middle of the upper right-hand quadrant of the battlefield. As you can see, Lady Domina has both her Ishaline Lockian Prince as well as her Ishaline Guard, and she also has her Morsar Guard leading the attack for that objective. I'm defending it primarily with Vanguard Hunters as well as my Aether Wing, and then she's also bringing out her Thralls and up to support in order to attack, and I'm doing exactly the same thing with my leader as well as his hunter in order to try to bring some support as well. So we're now at the end of turn number 2. We're going to start turn number 3, and this battle report does end at the end of turn number 3 with the person having the most fighters near that objective. So the next round is very, very important for both Lady Domina as well as myself. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the hero phase. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 3, and the Stormcast Eternals managed to get the initiative on this one. For my wild dice, I use one of them to make sure I have a triple 4s for one of my ability, and I also have a pair of 5s for my ability as well. Lady Domina also had start off with double 6s as well as double 5s as well, but she used her wild die in order to make sure that she has a triple, so she gave herself a triple 6 on that one. And so both Lady Domina and I both had singles, which means we both had to roll off for initiative. I managed to win the initiative on this one. So if you're wondering what the second brown die is in my little activation, which is all the black dice, it's not an additional wild die. It's just representing the fact that I won the roll off on that one. That's why it's not connected to the rest of the dice. So with the hero phase over with, we skip reserve phase and we go directly to the combat phase. Alright, so in the combat phase, the first person to activate is Balian Swiftsteel, and I pop my first 4 ability to get Inspiring Presence, so that way he can also co-activate Meridian Sunhelm. So for my actions, I actually spent 1 action for Balian Swiftsteel to get on top of the ruin, so that way he can engage in close combat if he's able to, and then have him open fire with his crossbow directly into, Midas Daechir. I managed to bring that guy up some couple of wounds as well. I then have Meridian Sunhelm open fire twice with his crossbow directly into the Ishaline Lockian Prince, Lord Midas Daechir, and we actually brought him up to 30 wounds in total. So that part was pretty cool. We actually make this guy almost dead. He's only got 5 wounds left before he dies. The only problem, though, is that the only person who's within base contact to fight against him is Hortus, so, you know, at the same time, not really holding my breath because, you know, this guy is probably going to survive, with all things being said. Meanwhile, Lady Domina then activates Lord Midas Daechir and she pops her Triple 6 ability to bring in the High Tide ability. And the High Tide ability can only be brought in during the 3rd battle round. So I wasn't sure originally what this did, but what this does, it gives all friendly fighters within 3 inches of her Aisling Lockian Prince +1 attack as well as +1 strength for the rest of the phase, then whoever's within 6 inches for close combat attacks is what she's pretty much doing on this one. What this actually does, it actually gives +1 strength and +1 attacks to her Morsar Guard. Also gives it to her Aisling Guard as well. Also gives it to her character Aisling Lockian Prince, and also if those thralls manage to move in as well, they will also get the bonus as well. And then for her second action, she just finished off Horus no problem because of that +1 strength and +1 attacks. I mean, it wasn't going to be much of a difficulty for her to actually do that. So now I'm realizing that maybe being in this situation, being so close to so many Idoneth Deepkin who can, get this ability off for this battle round, I'm starting to realize I made a bad decision to concentrate my forces around that objective. And to prove that point, you can see exactly what happened here. This is actually after several activations taking place within the combat phase on this one. This is primarily between Rakarth, her Aisling Guard, as well as Kalibos, her Morsar Guard, against Kato's Shadow Step, as well as against Tullius Virtus. So when it was all said and done for my characters, Kato's Shadow Step managed to use the +1 attack ability from the general abilities by popping that double 5s. When it was all said and done, I managed to put 14 wounds directly onto Kalibos, the Morsar Guard. That's the one who's actually right in front, right there in the middle of the screenshot on this one. Now, Sister Sarah, of course, then also counterattacked with the Karth, her Aisling Guard, and she also used a +1 to attack as well for one of her abilities, and she managed to flat out, I think, managed to murder, what's his name, Tullius Virtus, right off the bat, so that part was pretty tragic as well. I do manage to attack with him before he gets killed, though. I do manage to put, I think, 16 wounds when it was all said and done, but still, it was absolutely atrocious the amount of damage that guy actually put. But 20 wounds directly into my character, so that part was really sad as well. So as you can see here, just a huge bloodbath taking place right here in the middle of the battlefield. And since all my fighters are pretty much activated, the rest of the turn goes directly to Lady Domina. So she sends in both Shade as well as Lodi Daechir, her 2 Namarti Thralls. They actually also benefit from the +1 attack as well as +1 strength from the High Tide ability from their general. And they actually managed to put 10 wounds directly onto Kato's Shadow Step, so bringing him about halfway to being dead. So that part is kind of sad as well. And for the rest of the turn, Lady Domina activates both Sister Sinner as well as Mistress Iridani. Mistress Iridani moves up 6 inches and tries to open fire with her bow and arrow directly into Radiant Sunhelm. None of her attacks make it. She does exactly the same thing with Mistress Iridani, moving her up 6 inches, opening fire with her bow as well, and her shots are all combat ineffective. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us directly to the end of turn number 3. So this ends at the end of the battle report. So you can see here is the overhead shot of the battlefield with all the number of fighters that are near that objective marker. And as you can see, Lady Domina actually has much more fighters near that objective marker than actually I do. I ended up having 2 fighters who are near that objective. When it was all said and done, Lady Domina actually had 4. She had her 2 Thralls, as well as her Aisling Guard, as well as her Aisling Lockian Prince, all within range as well. So because of that, she managed to secure victory on this one by securing the Comet. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us directly to the end of the game, with the Idoneth Deepkin making the victory on this one by securing that Comet with just sheer mass of bodies on the objective rather than what I had. So that part's kind of rough as well. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the after action report because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
I thought about staying. They offered me the chance to lead them, to teach them, to be king.
Uh-huh.
But my place is here, so I swallowed the juice, said the words, and here I am.
Did you say the words right this time?
Well, maybe I didn't say every single tiny little syllable, no, but basically I said them, yeah. Basically.
Alright folks, now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report where we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time we do battle. This is the after action report for Saga the 8 points, battle report number 8, and this one ended up being a victory for Lady Domina. For my losses, I lost Samus Stormsight, Horus, as well as Tullius Virtus, and Lady Domina lost absolutely nothing. I did put a lot of wounds on guys, but I didn't manage to kill anybody. And just right off the bat, I just have to say, Idoneth Deepkin are no joke whatsoever. On paper, they may look like glass cannons with really low toughness and really low strength, but there are mounted elements in their army list, as well as those serpentine eel creatures that they fight with. Those things are as hard as nails. They can take a beating and still stay alive. And Lady Domina, hats off to her. She focused all of her attacks on my Stormcast Eternals, and what she did, she actually concentrated damage on each one by one, in order to kill off my defenses, so that way I had more people dying, and not enough people to defend against the objective when it was all said and done. Like I said before, at first glance, Idoneth Deepkin do seem like they're kind of weak, just because a couple of their abilities can only be used during certain turns of the battle report. I guess that kind of matches the narrative of how like they come out, gradually, and they get stronger as the battle goes on. I guess, but to be honest though, I can kind of see why they do that, and the reason why is because that high tide ability. That high tide ability really made me pay for it during this battle report. It gave all of our units in the 6 inches of our leader +1 strength as well as +1 attacks, and seeing how it was an objective game. So all of our forces were near the same objective, and they're all attacking that objective at the same time. It really concentrated forces and really just caused all kinds of problems for me. Death Spiral deployment also kind of worked against me too, because it kind of spread out my forces too thinly, and I wasn't fast enough to recover enough to concentrate my forces appropriately, because I can only move 8 inches at a time at max. While Lady Domina though, with those Idoneth Deepkin, those guys are fast. Their slowest mover moves 5 inches normally, and the mounted elements have a minimum of 10 plus inches when they move, especially if they use that low tide ability as well, giving them a bonus movement action as well. However, with that all being said, this was an extremely challenging game, and it was also extremely fun against an awesome opponent, and as always, I can't wait for the rematch for that one. So that's good to do for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is always appreciated. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news on this channel. That's good to do for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.